My wife and my best friend thought they broke me. They were right. What they didn't count on was what I did with the pieces. When people hear my wife left me for my best friend, they picture a specific kind of story. The angry man, the dramatic confrontation, the revenge arc. I want to tell you that my story has almost none of those things, and that what it has instead is something I didn't expect and couldn't have planned for, and am, 2 years later, more grateful for than I know how to say without sounding like a greeting card. This is the story of the worst year of my life and what it accidentally made me into. My name is Ben. I'm 36. For 10 years, I was married to a woman named Kate and best friends with a man named Sam. And for most of those 10 years, those two facts coexisted without friction in a way that felt natural and good. We were a unit, the three of us, plus whoever else was in orbit at any given time. Sam was at our wedding. I was at his when he married someone else entirely, a woman named Rachel, who he divorced 3 years later. After Sam's divorce, he was around more. Dinners, weekends, the kind of proximity that fills the space a marriage leaves when it ends. I am a high school history teacher. I want to tell you that plainly because it matters to the rest of the story, and because I think there's a version of this narrative where the job gets dressed up or minimized, and I don't want to do either. I teach history to 16 and 17-year-olds in Portland, Oregon. I have been doing this for 9 years. I am, by most measurable standards, good at it. My students perform well. I have a waiting list of parents who want their kids in my classes. I've been nominated for a district teaching award twice. It is not a glamorous job. It is the job I chose because I love it, which I understood was a different calculation than the one most people around me were making. Kate was a marketing executive. Her income was considerably higher than mine. We had agreed, early on, that this was fine, that two people could have different relationships with work and money, and that what mattered was that we both contributed what we could and valued what the other brought. I believed this. I think Kate believed it too for a while. I think at some point the gap between what we earned became a gap in how she saw us, and I didn't notice the shift happening because I was paying attention to other things. Sam had started his own consulting firm after his divorce, and it had done well. He had the specific energy of someone who has recently succeeded at something and knows it. Not arrogant exactly, but buoyant, in a way that takes up space. Kate and Sam had always gotten along. I had always been glad about that. I had read it as evidence that I had built a good life with good people in it. I was reading the evidence wrong. Kate told me on a Sunday in March, directly, without preamble, the way she handled things she'd decided. She sat me down and said she had feelings for Sam that had developed over the past several months, and that she thought I deserved to know rather than have it continue without my knowledge. She said she was sorry. She said she knew what this meant for Sam and me, and that she understood if I needed her to leave immediately. I asked one question. I said, "Does he know you're telling me?" She said yes. I nodded. I asked her to give me the evening alone. She went to stay with her sister. I sat in our living room for a long time, and then I called Sam. He picked up on the second ring. He said my name in a way that told me he'd been waiting for the call. I said, "I just need to know one thing. How long?" He told me, 4 months. I said, okay. I said I needed some time. He said he understood. I ended the call. Then I sat there until it was dark, and then until it was late. And then I went to bed and lay there looking at the ceiling with the specific sensation of a man whose map of his own life has just been rendered incorrect. Not the dramatic, cinematic version of that feeling. The quiet, disorienting, completely ordinary version. The version that doesn't make a sound. The next morning, I got up at 6:15, made coffee, and went to school. I had a class at 8 a.m., juniors, the lead up to World War I, a unit I knew well enough to teach in my sleep. I taught it. I ate lunch. I taught 2 more classes. I drove home. I did this every day for the next 2 weeks while Kate stayed at her sister's and the attorneys began their work, and I tried to understand what shape my life was going to take when the immediate crisis had passed. I want to be honest about the year after, because honesty is the point of this. The divorce itself was not the hardest part. Kate and I were functional about it in the way that 2 people can be, when both of them know what happened and neither of them wants to spend years in litigation. The settlement was fair. She kept the condo. We both agreed that made more sense given the finances. I moved into a rental, a 2-bedroom, in a neighborhood I didn't know well, and started the process of building a life that was mine alone for the first time in 10 years. The hardest part was Sam. Not the anger, though there was anger, real and specific, and occasionally volcanic in the privacy of my car on the way home from somewhere. The hardest part was the 14 years. 14 years of a friendship that had been, I genuinely believed, one of the most significant relationships of my adult life. 14 years of someone who knew me completely. My history, my family, my fears, my specific brand of humor, the things I was proud of, and the things I was ashamed of. That knowledge doesn't disappear when someone betrays you. It just becomes a different kind of thing. Something that was once intimacy and is now exposure. I didn't eat well for about 3 months. I slept badly. I went to work and taught history, and came home to an apartment that was very quiet and very mine. And some nights, the combination of those 2 things was unbearable, and some nights it was fine, and I never knew in advance which kind of night it was going to be. My therapist, I started seeing someone in month 2, which was the right decision, told me early on that grief doesn't follow a schedule, and that trying to force it to would cost me more than letting it move at its own pace. I have thought about that advice many times in the 18 months since. It was correct, and I resented it for about 6 months before I understood why. The lowest point was a Tuesday in November, 8 months in. I was grading papers at my kitchen table, junior essays on the causes of the First World War, which I have read approximately 900 versions of over 9 years, and one of my students had written a sentence that was so unexpectedly precise and insightful that I stopped and read it 3 times. And then I did something I hadn't done in 8 months. I laughed, out loud, alone in my apartment, at a 17-year-old's essay about Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It lasted about 4 seconds. Then I went back to grading. But something had shifted, and I knew it had shifted. And I held on to that 4 seconds for a long time afterward. In January, 10 months after Kate told me, I did something I had been thinking about for years and had never acted on. I signed up for a creative writing class at the community college 2 evenings a week. Not for any particular reason I could articulate precisely. I had always written, privately, journals and fragments and things I'd never shown anyone. And something in the previous 10 months had made the idea of continuing to keep everything private feel untenable, like I needed somewhere to put it that wasn't just inside me. The class was taught by a woman named Professor Aldrich, who was 71 years old and had published 4 novels, and had no patience for writing that wasn't honest. The first assignment was to write 1 page about something true. I wrote about the Tuesday in November and the student's essay and the 4 seconds of laughing alone in my kitchen. She read it in class, without my name, per the workshop format. When she finished, she said, "This is the best thing anyone has turned in so far. Whoever wrote it, keep going." I kept going. Over the following year, I wrote, consistently, and with a seriousness I hadn't applied to anything personal in a long time. Not about the betrayal specifically, or not only about that, about teaching, about what it feels like to watch young people encounter ideas for the first time, about my father, who died when I was 22, and who I had been thinking about more than usual in the previous year, for reasons I understood imperfectly. about the specific quality of Tuesday afternoons in a classroom when the light comes through the windows at a certain angle and 17-year-olds are arguing about history with an intensity they don't yet know is rare. Professor Aldrich told me in April that I should submit something to a literary journal. I told her I didn't think what I was writing was that kind of writing. She said I was wrong and gave me a list of journals and told me to stop arguing with her about my own work. I submitted 3 pieces. One was accepted. A small journal, not prestigious, but real. When the email came, I sat at my kitchen table and read it 4 times and then called my mother, who cried, which made me cry, which was fine. That was 14 months ago. Since then, 2 more pieces have been published. A longer essay about teaching history and what it means to try to make the past feel alive to people who weren't there was picked up by a publication I had read for years. The editor asked if I had more. I said I was working on something longer. She said to send it when it was ready. I am working on something longer. It is about a year of a man's life that broke him and what he did with the pieces, which I understand is not the most original premise, but which I think I have something specific to say about. Professor Aldrich has read the first 60 pages. She said it was good and that I should keep going and stop asking her if it was good. I still teach. I am not going to stop teaching. It is the work I was made for, and the writing has not changed that. It has clarified it. My students this year are the best class I've had in 9 years, which I say every year and mean every year. One of them, a girl named Priya who argues with everything I say and is always right, wrote an essay last month that I told her was better than anything I wrote at her age. She told me that wasn't a very high bar. I told her she was probably correct. I am not in a relationship. I've been on a few dates, nothing serious, and I'm not looking for serious right now. I am, for the first time in a long time, interested primarily in my own life and what it produces, which is a state I didn't know I'd been missing until I found my way back to it. I have not spoken to Sam since the night I called him. He reached out once, 8 months after, a long message I read carefully and did not respond to. There was nothing in it I needed and nothing I had to offer in return. That's not anger, or not primarily anger. It's just the recognition that some doors, once closed, don't need to be reopened to be properly closed. Kate and Sam are together. I know this the way you know things you didn't seek out, through the inevitable drift of information in a city where lives overlap. I have no feeling about it that I can locate clearly. They are living their life, and I am living mine, and the 2 things are genuinely separate now in a way that took most of the past 2 years to become real. I think about the Sunday in March sometimes, the way Kate sat me down and said what she said with the directness she brought to everything. I have been angry at her, and I have not been angry at her, and I have been somewhere in between most of the time, which is probably the most honest place to be. What I keep returning to is not the betrayal itself, but the year that followed. The apartment, the quiet, the terrible Tuesdays, and the occasional 4 seconds of laughing alone in my kitchen. The writing class I signed up for without a clear reason. The page I wrote about something true. That page was the beginning of something I didn't know I had in me. I needed the year that preceded it to write it. I would not have written it otherwise. I don't know what to do with that. Whether it makes what happened mean something or whether meaning is something I'm imposing on events that were just events. What I know is this: I am more myself than I have been in a long time. The work I do, in the classroom and at the kitchen table at night, is the most honest work I've ever done. I live in an apartment that is very quiet and very mine, and most nights that is exactly what I want it to be. The pieces turned out to be enough to build something with. That's the whole story. That's all of it. If the writing class part hit you, the thing you've been putting off for years that you signed up for without a clear reason, pay attention to that. Sometimes the thing you do without knowing why is the exact right thing. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you. This was a different kind of story. Drop a like if it meant something. Subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the next one.